Hi, this is Lakshmi Priya. I came up with a new polity series, that is Indian Polity by M. Laxmikanth. In this series, I'll be covering all the polity chapters of M. Laxmikanth. Hope this series will be helpful for you. So in today's session, we'll deal with the first chapter, that is historical background. As you all know, Britishers came to India in the year 1600 as traders with a company named East India Company. They were given the rights under the charter. This was given by Queen Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth I. Okay. They were given the exclusive rights for trading in India. In 1765, they were given Diwani rights. Okay, Diwani rights is nothing but revenue, rights over revenue and civil justice. Okay, earlier they were given only the trading rights, but in 1765 they were given Diwani rights, that is rights over revenue and civil justice. See, before 1765, two major events took place. Let us see what are they. First, Battle of Plassey. Okay, Battle of Plassey in 1757. This took place between Siraj-ud-Dawla versus AIC, British. Okay, obviously Britishers won the battle. Next, Battle of Buxar in 1764. This took place between Mir Qasim, Siraj-ud-Dawla. In Battle of Plassey, Siraj-ud-Dawla. Here it is Siraj-ud-Dawla. And Shah Alam II, he is Mughal emperor. Okay, versus again Britishers. Again in this battle also Britishers won. Okay, in detail you'll be seeing in modern history. Here just for a knowledge sake, we'll see here in polity. See, after these two battles and in 1858, Sepoy Mutiny took place. Okay, Sepoy Mutiny. After this Sepoy Mutiny, British Crown took direct control over India. Direct control over India. Okay, next we'll see the idea of Constituent Assembly. Constituent Assembly idea was given by M.N. Roy in the year 1934. Okay, this was the Constituent Assembly which was formed in 1946. Dec 9th. So he was the one, he's M.N. Roy. He came up with an idea of Constituent Assembly. Okay. Now let us see the historical background. Historical background. See, historical background. There were many laws. They were divided into company rule and crown's rule. Okay, company rule from 1773 to 1858. Crown's rule from 1858 to 1947. See, again this company rule is divided into Regulating Act and Charter Act. Okay, again this Regulating Act is divided into Regulating Act of 1773 and Pitt's India Act. Pitt's India Act of 1784. Now this Charter Act is divided into Charter Act of 1813, Charter Act of 1833, Charter Act of 1853. Next we'll see the Crown's Rule. Crown's Rule also divided into two: Council Act and Government of India Act. Okay, under this Council Act of 1861, Council Act of 1892, Council Act of 1909. Again, Government of India Act, Government of India Act of 1858, Government of India Act of 1919, Government of India Act of 1935. Okay, finally India Independence Act of India Independence Act of 1947. Okay, we'll see this laws in detail. Okay. First we'll see the company rule 1773 to 1858. Under this we'll see Regulating Act of 1773. See, this act was a great constitutional importance because it was the first step of, this act is the first step of centralization. First step of centralization. Next, for the first time the political and administrative functions of the company was recognized. Okay, political and administrative. Administrative functions were recognized. Okay, now let us see the features. It designated the Governor of Bengal as Governor General of Bengal. See, this Governor General was given some more power and he was made the Governor General of Bengal, wherein Hastings was the first Governor General of Bengal. Next, Executive Council of Governor General was established. So under this Regulating Act of 1993, Executive Council of Governor General was established. It subordinated the governors of Bombay and Madras to the Governor General of Bengal. See, earlier Governor of Bombay, Governor of Madras and Governor of Bengal, all these three were independent. But now under this Regulating Act of 1773, Governor General of Bengal was given the higher power. This Governor of Bombay and Governor of Madras, they were made the subordinates to the Governor General of Bengal. So whatever work is done, everything should be reported to Governor General of Bengal. Next, Supreme Court was established in 1774 at Calcutta. Okay, this is important. Supreme Court was established at Calcutta in 1774 under this Regulating Act of 1773. Next, it prohibited the servants of a company from engaging in any private trade or accepting bribes from the natives. So the workers working under the EIC were not allowed to work in any private trade. Next, Court of Directors should report its revenues. Okay, Court of Directors must report their revenues. Next, we'll see the Amending Act of 1781. So this act is not present in the 5th edition of Laxmikanth. So I suggest you to study the new edition, that is 6th edition of Laxmikanth. Now let us see the Amending Act of 1781. It exempted the Governor General and Council from the jurisdiction of Supreme Court for acts done by them in their official capacity. See, earlier we have seen GG of Bengal, okay, who is in the East India Company, that is India. He should report to Court of Directors, which is in Britain, right? This court of directors will report to British Parliament. See, if there is any delay in the report from GG of Bengal, obviously there will be a delay in the British Parliament. So to avoid this, there were few amendments made to the Regulating Act of 1773. Okay, now let us see all of them. It exempted GG and Council from the jurisdiction of Supreme Court. Next, it exempted the actions of the public servants of a company from the jurisdiction of Supreme Court. Okay, so that there will not be any delay. Revenue collectors and judicial officers officers of company courts were also exempted from the jurisdiction of Supreme Court. It laid down that appeal could be taken from the provisional courts to the GG in Council and not to Supreme Court. See, as you all know, lower courts appeal to the higher courts. Again, cases may get delay in this case. So what provision was given under this act is, lower courts can that is provisional courts can directly appeal to Governor General in Council. Instead of appealing the higher courts, they can directly appeal to GG in Council. Next, it empowered Governor General in Council to make regulations and provisional courts and councils. So earlier higher courts used to make regulations to the lower courts. Now GG in Council, he was given power to make regulations for provisional courts and councils. Next, we'll see Pitt's India Act of 1784. See, Pitt's India Act of 1784 distinguished between commercial and political functions. See, earlier in 1773 Regulating Act, we have seen political and administrative functions, right? Under this Pitt's India Act of 1784, we have seen the commercial and political functions of a company. Next, Court of Directors for commercial functions and Board of Control for political affairs. See, the new body Board of Control was introduced in Pitt's India Act of 1784. Commercial functions were under Court of Directors and political affairs was under Board of Control. Next, the company territories in India were called the British possessions in India. See, whatever EIC territories are there in India, they were called as British possessions in India from under this Pitt's India Act of 1784. Next, the British government was given the supreme control over companies' affairs and its administration in India. Okay, British government is given the supreme control over companies' affairs and its administration in India under the Pitt's India Act of 1784. Next, we'll see the Act of 1786. This is also present in 6th edition but not in 5th edition of Laxmikanth. See, Lord Cornwallis was made Governor General of Bengal. He placed two demands to accept that post. So, to accept this Governor General of Bengal post, he made two demands. What are they? He should be given power to override the decision of his council, and he would also be the Commander-in-Chief. So, if these two demands of Cornwallis were accepted, then only he will accept the post of GG of Bengal. This was given under the Act of 1786. Next, we'll see the Charter Act of 1793. It extended the overriding power given to Lord Cornwallis over his council to all future Governor Generals and Governors of Presidencies. So earlier in 1786, we have seen Lord Cornwallis demanded two demands. This was not only given to him but also to all future governors also. Okay, this was extended to all future governors and Governor Generals of Presidencies under the Charter Act of 1793. Next, the Governor General was granted extensive power over the subordinate presidencies of Madras and Bombay. So, Governor General, he was given the extensive rights over presidencies of Madras and Bombay. Next, it continued the company's trade monopoly in India for another 20 years. See, what is company's trade monopoly? Except EIC, any other private members are not allowed to trade in India. Okay, only EIC has a power to trade in India, and that continued for another 20 years. Next, it laid down that members of Board of Control and their staff were henceforth to be paid out of Indian revenues. So, members of Board of Control were paid from the Indian revenues. Okay, these are the features of Charter Act of 1793. Next, we will see the Charter Act of 1813. The trade monopoly was ended except for the trade in tea, opium, and with China. See, earlier we have seen there was a trade monopoly for another 20 years. Right? But here in Charter Act of 1813, trade monopoly was ended except for trade in tea, opium, and with China. So private members can trade in India, but they can't trade in tea, opium, and China. These three trades are done only by the EIC. Next, the act was to grant permission to the missionaries to come to India and engage with the people. Okay, this Charter Act gave the permission to the Christian missionaries to come to India and engage with the people. Next, it provided for the spread of Western education among the inhabitants of British territories in India. So, spread of Western education also started under the Charter Act of 1813. Next, it empowered the local governments to tax people subject to the jurisdiction of Supreme Court. So, local governments were given power to tax the people, and also they were given power to punish the people if they doesn't pay the tax. These are the features under the Charter Act of 1813. Now let us see the Charter Act of 1833. This was the final step towards the centralization in British India. Okay, first step of centralization took place in 1773. Right? First step of centralization. Final step of centralization in 1833. Okay. Next, GG of Bengal became the GG of India. See, in 1733, Governor of Bengal became the Governor General of Bengal. Now, this Governor General of Bengal became the Governor General of India. First Governor General of Bengal was Warren Hastings. Right? Next, Governor General of India. The first Governor General of India was Lord William Bentinck. Okay, the laws made under the previous act were called regulations, while the laws under this act are called acts. Earlier, the laws were called regulations. Now, they are called as acts. Next, the act ended the activities of East India Company as a commercial body, and it became a purely administrative body. See, in Pitt's India Act of 1784, we have seen the commercial body and commercial and political functions, right? Now this commercial body ended, and it's purely administrative body. Next, we'll see the Charter Act of 1853. The legislative and executive functions of the Governor General's Council were separated. Okay, this is important. The legislative and executive functions were separated. Next, it introduced a system of open competition on the basis of recruitment of civil service. This is also important. Recruitment of civil servants. Open competition system was started in 1853. For the first time, local representation in the Legislative Council. This also started in Charter Act of 1853. 4 out of 6 members were appointed by the provisional governments of Madras, Bombay, Bengal, and Agra. Okay, all these are the features under the Charter Act of 1853. Now let us see the Crown's rule. Crown's rule took place from 1858 to 1947. Under this, we'll see the Government of India Act of 1858. See, in 1858, we have seen Sepoy Mutiny took place. From then, British Crown took the direct control of India. Okay. So this is the Act of Good Government of India. So it is called as Act of Good Government of India. The Governor General was made the Viceroy of India. Okay, Lord Canning was the first Viceroy of India. It abolished the Board of Control and Court of Directors. See, these two again we have seen in Pitt's India Act of 1784. 1784 we have seen in this Board of Control and Court of Directors under Pitt's India Act of 1784. Now this both were abolished under Government of India Act of 1858. Next, the powers of the British Crown were to be exercised by the Secretary of State. Again, new body, Secretary of State, was introduced. So all the powers of the British Crown were to be exercised by Secretary of State. Next, he was assisted by the Council of India having 15 members. So 15 members from the Council of India were assisting the Secretary of State. Okay. Next, we'll see the Indian Council Act of 1861. It introduced for the first time Indian representation in the institution associated with lawmaking. Okay, for the first time Indian representation was made with the lawmaking process. See, Indian Council Act of 1861 is also called as Toothless Act, because though they were Indian representation in the lawmaking process, but these Indians were not elected. Okay, they were not elected. The one who are under the British control, okay, they were appointed for the lawmaking process. That is why this is called as Toothless Act. Legislative councils were established in center and provinces. Okay, this also is important. It took place under the Indian Council Act of 1861. Next, it initiated the process of decentralization. Okay, first step of decentralization in 1861. Next, it provided for the Viceroy's Executive Council should have some Indians as a non-official members while transacting the legislative business. This is also important. So first time under the Indian Council Act of 1861, Viceroys of Executive Council should have some Indians as a non-official members. Okay. Next, it accorded statutory recognition to the portfolio system. See, portfolio system is nothing but issuing ordinances. At present, President has a power to issue ordinances when Parliament is not in session. Okay, earlier Viceroy has a power to issue ordinances. Okay. Next, we'll see the Indian Council Act of 1892. It enlarged the size of legislative councils. That is, it increased the additional non-official members in the legislative councils. Additional non-official members in the legislative council. Next, it enlarged the functions of the legislative councils and gave them the power of discussing the budget and addressing the questions to the executive. This is also important. Discussing of budget first took place under the Indian Council Act of 1892. Next, it introduced the indirect elections. It introduced the indirect elections. That is, it provided for the nomination of some non-official members. Okay. Next, we will see the Indian Council Act of 1909. This act is also known as Morley-Minto reforms. Lord Morley, he was the secretary, and Minto was the viceroy. Okay, at that time. So, Indian Council Act of 1909 is also called as Morley-Minto reforms. It increased the size of both central and provisional councils. The number of members of Central Legislative Council was increased to 60 from 16. See, earlier Central Legislative Council was having only 16 members. Now it is increased to 60 members. It provided for the association of Indians with the executive councils of Viceroy and governors. Okay. For the first time under the Indian Council Act of 1909, Indians were associated with the council of viceroy and governors. Next, it introduced a system of communal representation for Muslims by accepting the separate electorate. See, before 1909, in 1905, partition of Bengal took place, and this was supported by some of the Muslims. Okay, in favor to them, communal representation was started by accepting the concept of separate electorates. Okay, next, Indians for the first time in Viceroy's Executive Council. Okay, Indian Council Act of 1909 introduced the Indians for the first time in Viceroy's Executive Council. The first Indian law member was Satyendra Prasanna Sinha. Next, we will see the Government of India Act of 1919. This act is also known as Montagu-Chelmsford Reform. Montagu, again, he is the secretary. Chelmsford was the viceroy. The central subjects were demarcated and separated from those of provincial subjects. So under this act, central subjects and provincial subjects were separated. The dual scheme of governance, diarchy, was introduced in the provincial subjects. This is also important. Diarchy at province was introduced. What is diarchy? See, there was central and provisional. There are two lists, reserved and transferred. Okay, reserved under the center and transferred under the province. See, under the diarchy system, the provisional subjects were divided into two parts, transferred and reserved. On reserved subjects, governor was not responsible to the legislative council. Reserved, only governor. Transferred, governor plus ministers. Okay, the act introduced for the first time bicameralism at the center. Bicameralism, legislative assembly and legislative council. This was introduced for the first time in 1919. This is also important. Bicameralism was introduced for the first time in Government of India Act of 1919. Legislative assembly with 140 members and legislative council with 60 members. Next, it introduced the direct elections. The act also required that the 3 of the 6 members of Viceroy Executive Council were to be Indians. 3 out of 6 were Indians in the Viceroy's Executive Council. Next, it extended the principle of communal representation by providing separate electorates for Sikhs, Indian Christians, Anglo-Indians and Europeans. Earlier in 1909, we have seen communal representation was introduced for the Muslims. Now, it was introduced for Sikhs, Indian Christians, Anglo-Indians and Europeans. Next, it granted franchise to limited number of people. This limitation was based on property, education and taxpayers. Okay, only these people were given the franchise. Next, it separated for the first time provisional budgets from the central budgets and authorized the provincial legislature to enact their budgets. Okay, this is also important. Yes. Provisional budgets were separated from the central budgets, and the provisional legislature was given power to enact their budgets. Next, it provided for the establishment of Public Service Commission. Next, we will see the Government of India Act of 1935. The establishment of All India Federation consisting of province and princely states as units. Okay, under the Government of India Act of 1935, All India Federation was established. Okay, it consists of province and princely states as their units. Next, it abolished the diarchy at province. Earlier, we have seen the diarchy at province at 1919 Government of India Act. This was abolished and it adopted the diarchy at center. Okay. Government of India Act of 1935 adopted the diarchy at center. Next, it introduced the bicameralism in 6 out of 11 provinces. Okay, out of 11 provinces, bicameralism was introduced in the 6th province. And what are those 6 provinces? Assam, Bengal, Bombay, Bihar, Madras and United Province. Next, it further extended principle of communal representation by providing separate electorate for depressed classes. Okay, in 1909, for Muslims, right, communal representation was established for Muslims. In 1919, it was further extended to Sikhs, Anglo-Indians and Indian Christians. Now in 1935, it is extended to depressed classes. Okay, it abolished the Council of India established by Government of India Act of 1858. So in Government of India Act of 1858, we have seen the establishment of Council of India. This was abolished in Government of India Act of 1935. Next, it extended the franchise about 10%. Okay, earlier we have seen only the limited franchise. This was extended for further 10%. It provided for the establishment of RBI to control the currency and credit of the country. So RBI was established under the RBI Act. RBI Act of 1935. Next, it provided for the establishment of Federal Court. Okay. Next, we will see the Indian Independence Act of 1947. It declared the India as an independent and sovereign state. Okay, next it provided for the partition of India and creation of 2 new dominions, India and Pakistan. Next, it abolished the position of Secretary of State for the India. We have seen the Secretary of State in Government of India Act of 1958. This was abolished in Indian Independence Act of 1947. Office of Viceroy also we have seen in the Government of India Act of 1958. This was also abolished under Indian Independence Act of 1947. It empowered the constituent assemblies of the 2 dominions to frame and adopt any constitution for their respective nations. So it gave power to two dominions, that is India and Pakistan, to adopt any constitution of their respective nations. Okay, it granted the princely states the freedom to join either of the dominions or to remain independent. So princely states were given freedom to join any of the dominion, either India or Pakistan. Also, they were given freedom to remain independent. Next, governance of each dominion was to be conducted based on the provisions of Government of India Act of 1935. Okay, each dominion, India and Pakistan, governance should be based on the province of Government of India Act of 1935. Next, the British monarch could no longer ask for bills or vetoes. Earlier, British was having a power to ask bills, and it also has a veto power. Now, it doesn't have veto power, and it doesn't have any power to ask the bills. Next, Governor General of Dominions were to be act on aid and advice of Council. Earlier, Governor General has its own power. Now, it should act according to the aid and advice of Council. Okay. Next, British rule came to okay, these are some of the features of Indian Independence Act of 1947. Now, British rule came to an end in India. Lord Mountbatten became the first Governor General of the new Dominion of India. The Constituent Assembly of India was formed in 1946. Okay, 9th December 1946, and became the Parliament of Indian Dominion. After independence, this Constituent Assembly became the Parliament of the Indian Dominion. Okay. With this, we have completed the historical background. If you like my work and if you feel it is helpful for you, then like the video, and if you want me to continue the series, then comment down below. Thank you.